The morning sun cast long shadows across New Eden's wheat fields when the sky began to burn. Sarah Chun looked up from her tablet, where she had been reviewing the colony's harvest projections, and watched in horror as streaks of plasma fire rained down from the heavens like angry meteors. "Emergency broadcast to all sectors," she shouted into her communicator, her voice cutting through the peaceful morning air. "This is Governor Chun. We are under attack. All civilians to emergency shelters immediately." The Galactic Council's warning had come just 3 hours earlier. A brief, cold transmission that left no room for negotiation. Human colony New Eden has violated Galactic Law 847b by expanding agricultural operations into protected wilderness zones. The colony will be terminated to preserve ecological balance. You have 2 hours to evacuate. 2 hours. For a population of 3 million souls to abandon everything they had built over 20 years. Sarah had tried to reason with them. She had explained that the expansion was necessary to feed the growing population, that they had followed all environmental protocols, that their impact studies showed minimal ecological disruption. The Council's response had been swift and final. Compliance is not negotiable. Evacuation or elimination. Now, as the first orbital bombardment platforms unleashed their fury, Sarah realized the true meaning of the Council's words. This was not a warning shot. This was extermination. The capital city of Haven took the first direct hit. The administrative complex where Sarah had spent countless hours planning the colony's future vanished in a flash of superheated plasma. The library that housed the collective knowledge and culture of New Eden's diverse population disappeared in an instant. The children's hospital, the university, the memorial park where they honored their dead, all reduced to ash and molten glass. In the rural sectors, families ran for shelter as their farms burned around them. Marcus Webb, a third-generation farmer whose grandfather had been among the first settlers, watched his life's work consumed by alien fire. The orchards that had taken decades to cultivate, the genetic seed banks that represented humanity's agricultural heritage, the livestock that had been carefully bred for the planet's unique conditions, all lost. "This is Captain Torres of the New Eden Defense Force," came a crackling transmission over the emergency channels. "All militia units to battle stations. We're going to buy as much time as we can for civilian evacuation." The Defense Force consisted of 12 aging patrol craft and a few dozen ground-based weapons platforms. Against the Council's assault fleet of 200 ships, they stood no chance. But they fought anyway, because that was what humans did when backed into a corner. Captain Maria Torres had been born on New Eden. This was her home, her world, her people. She pushed her fighters' engines to maximum burn as she led her small squadron toward the massive Zilithian Dreadnoughts hanging in orbit like dark angels of death. "Remember," she told her pilots, "we're not trying to win. We're trying to give our people time to get to the underground shelters. Every minute we stay alive is another 100 civilians who might make it." The first exchange lasted exactly 47 seconds. The human fighters, designed for patrol and rescue operations, fired everything they had at the nearest Council ship. Their missiles and energy weapons splashed harmlessly against shields designed to withstand the firepower of full battle fleets. The return volley vaporized 3 fighters instantly. Torres watched her wingman's craft disappear in a ball of superheated metal and felt something cold settle in her chest. This was not warfare. This was slaughter. But she kept flying, kept fighting, because somewhere below her burning world, people were still trying to reach safety. Dr. Yuki Tanaka worked frantically in the underground research facility beneath Haven's ruins. The quantum communication array was still functional, and she had been transmitting everything she could to Earth and the other human colonies. Tactical data on the Council ships, recordings of their communications, proof of the unprovoked attack. "The signal's getting through," she reported to the handful of technicians still at their posts. "Earth is receiving everything." Through the facility's sensors, she could see the surface temperature rising as the bombardment continued. The Council wasn't just destroying infrastructure, they were sterilizing the planet, converting the atmosphere into a toxic soup that would kill anything left alive. "Doctor," called one of her assistants, "we're getting massive energy readings from the Council fleet. They're charging something big." Tanaka pulled up the sensor data and felt her blood run cold. The readings were off the charts. Whatever the aliens were preparing, it would finish what the orbital bombardment had started. She activated the emergency beacon, sending out a final transmission to anyone who might be listening. This is Dr. Yuki Tanaka of the New Eden Research Station. The Galactic Council has deployed what appears to be a planet-killer weapon. New Eden will be gone in approximately 20 minutes. Tell our story. Make them pay. In the deep shelters beneath the colony's major cities, 300,000 survivors huddled in darkness and listened to their world die above them. The shelters had been designed to withstand natural disasters and provide temporary refuge during emergencies. They had never been intended to protect against orbital bombardment. Sarah Chun moved through the crowded shelter beneath Haven, trying to provide comfort and leadership even as she felt her own hope dying. Children cried for parents who would never come. Elderly colonists sat in stunned silence, watching the life's work of an entire generation disappear on the shelter's emergency screens. "Governor," whispered Thomas Wright, her chief of security. "The surface readings are showing atmospheric ionization. Whatever they're doing up there, it's affecting the entire planet's ecosystem." Sarah nodded grimly. She understood what he wasn't saying. Even if they survived the bombardment, even if they somehow made it through the next few hours, New Eden was dying. The Council wasn't just destroying their colony, they were murdering their world. But humans were stubborn creatures. Even in the face of certain death, they continued to hope, to plan, to dream of survival. Engineers worked on strengthening the shelter systems. Doctors treated the wounded who had made it underground. Teachers gathered children together and told them stories to keep their minds off the hell raging above. And in the deepest part of the shelter, in a heavily shielded communications room, a small team of operators maintained contact with the outside universe. Every detail of the attack was being recorded and transmitted. Every war crime documented and sent to human space. The Council had made a fatal error. They had assumed that destroying New Eden would serve as a warning to other human colonies, a demonstration of their power and their willingness to use it against any species that dared to challenge their authority. Instead, they had just created 3 million martyrs. Captain Torres's fighter finally succumbed to the Council's fire over the ruins of New Eden's northern continent. As her craft broke apart around her, she managed one last transmission. "This is Torres. Tell them how we fought. Tell them we never gave up. And tell them to make these bastards pay for every single life they've taken today." The massive energy surge began at 1432 local time. The Council's planet-killer weapon drew power from their entire fleet, focusing it into a coherent beam of destruction that struck New Eden's core. The planet convulsed as tectonic forces beyond imagination tore at its foundation. In the shelters, the lights went out one by one. Emergency power systems failed as electromagnetic pulses from the planet's destruction overwhelmed their circuits. In the darkness, 300,000 human voices began to sing. It was an old song, one that had been brought from Earth by the first settlers. "Amazing Grace," performed by voices that ranged from children's soprano to elderly bass, echoing through the dying tunnels of what had once been humanity's proudest achievement beyond the solar system. Dr. Tanaka's final transmission cut off mid-sentence as her facility was consumed by the expanding destruction. Her last words would be found in the quantum storage buffers of Earth's deep space monitoring stations weeks later. "They think this ends with us. They think this is a victory. But they don't understand what they've done. They don't understand humans. This isn't the end. This is the beginning." New Eden died at 1447 local time on a Tuesday afternoon. Where once a blue and green world had orbited a yellow star, only an expanding field of debris remained. 3 million human lives, 20 years of hopes and dreams, an entire civilization, gone in the space of an hour. But in the quantum data streams racing toward human space at the speed of light, something else was being born. Something dark and terrible and absolutely determined. The Council had sown the wind with their casual genocide. Soon, they would reap the whirlwind. Admiral Catherine Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship and watched the last transmission from New Eden play out on her screens. She had been born in space, raised among the stars, and had seen more conflict than most humans ever would. But nothing had prepared her for this. "Admiral," Her communications officer reported quietly, "We're receiving similar reports from the outer colonies. The Council has issued ultimatums to 17 other worlds. They're calling it environmental protection enforcement, but the pattern is clear." Morrison nodded slowly. The destruction of New Eden hadn't been an isolated incident. It was the opening move in a larger campaign. The Galactic Council had decided that humanity was a threat to their vision of cosmic order, and they intended to deal with that threat permanently. "Send word to the Admiralty," she commanded. "Full mobilization. Every ship, every station, every resource. And give me a direct line to the President." She paused, watching the final moments of New Eden's death play out in horrific detail. 3 million innocent people, murdered for the crime of trying to build a better life among the stars. "Tell them," she said quietly, "that the war has begun." In the ruins of what had been New Eden, automated council probes moved through the debris field, scanning for any signs of life, any evidence that their work was incomplete. They found nothing but cooling metal and crystallized atmosphere. The organic matter that had once been human beings had been reduced to its component atoms, scattered across space like cosmic dust. The probes dutifully reported their findings to the Council fleet, which began to disperse to their next targets. The Zalithian commander who had overseen the operation filed his report with typical alien efficiency. Human colony designated New Eden successfully eliminated. No survivors detected. Ecological threat removed. Proceeding to next target as directed. It was a clean, clinical summary of genocide. The kind of paperwork that would be filed away in some vast bureaucratic archive and forgotten by history. But the Council had made one crucial mistake in their calculations. They had assumed that humanity would react to the destruction of New Eden the way other species had reacted to Council punishment in the past, with fear, submission, and desperate attempts to appease their alien overlords. They had never encountered a species quite like humans before. In the depths of space, automated beacons left behind by the dying colony continued to broadcast their final messages. Emergency signals that painted the void with stories of courage, sacrifice, and determination. Tales of ordinary people who had chosen to fight impossible odds rather than submit to tyranny. And, in human space, those signals were being received by people who understood exactly what they meant. The message was simple and clear: remember us. Remember what they did to us. And, when the time comes, make them pay. Humanity had always been a young species, barely beginning to explore the galaxy when they encountered the Council's rigid hierarchies and ancient laws. They had tried to fit in, to follow the rules, to earn their place among the stars through patience and diplomacy. The destruction of New Eden had just taught them a valuable lesson about the true nature of galactic politics. In a universe governed by the strong, there was only one currency that mattered: power. And, if the Council wanted to deal in that currency, humanity would be happy to accommodate them. The war for human survival had begun with the casual murder of 3 million innocents. It would end with the galaxy learning to fear the quiet fury of an aroused humanity. But, first, they had to build the tools of their revenge. 500,000 dreadnoughts seemed like a good place to start. President Elena Vasquez stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Assembly, her face carved from stone as she delivered the news that would change everything. The Great Hall, which had once hosted debates about trade routes and colonial development, now echoed with the quiet fury of a species that had just learned the true cost of galactic citizenship. "The Galactic Council has declared war on humanity," she said, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the chamber. "They may not call it war. They may wrap their genocide in pretty words about environmental protection and cosmic balance. But when 3 million innocent people are murdered for the crime of growing food on their own world, there is only one word that applies." The silence that followed was absolute. Representatives from Earth's major nations, colonial governors connected via quantum link, military commanders, and civilian leaders all absorbed the full implications of what had just been said. "The question before us today," Vasquez continued, "is not whether we will respond. The question is how thoroughly we intend to respond. The Council believes they can exterminate human colonies one by one, that we will submit rather than face extinction. They are about to learn how profoundly they have misunderstood our species. Admiral Zhang Wei, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, rose from his seat. The old man's face bore the scars of humanity's last major conflict, the resource wars that had nearly destroyed Earth before uniting it. He had spent the last 40 years preparing for threats from within the solar system. Now he faced something far worse. Madam President, he said formally, I need to be clear about our current capabilities. Our total fleet consists of approximately 2,000 vessels, most designed for patrol and colonial support. The Council fields battle fleets that number in the hundreds of thousands. In a conventional engagement, we would be annihilated. The Admiral paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Then, his expression hardened into something that reminded everyone present why Zhang Wei was considered the most dangerous military mind humanity had ever produced. However, he continued, the Council has just made the mistake of giving us time to prepare. Their ultimatums to other colonies suggest they intend to proceed systematically, world by world. They believe fear will paralyze us. Instead, they have given us something infinitely more valuable than they realize: motivation and the knowledge that we have nothing left to lose. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, Director of Human Colonial Development, stood to address the assembly. She had been Sarah Chen's mentor, the woman who had trained the late governor of New Eden in colonial administration. The loss was personal for her, written in every line of her face. The 17 colonies under immediate threat represent nearly 20 million human lives, she reported. The Council's ultimatums give each world 96 hours to evacuate or face elimination. But there's nowhere for them to evacuate to. Our transport capacity can't move that many people, and the Council has made it clear they won't allow refugees to establish new settlements. She pulled up a holographic display showing the threatened colonies scattered across human space, each glowing dot represented not just a world, but dreams, families, entire communities that had spent decades building new homes among the stars. They're not just trying to destroy our colonies, Harper continued. They're trying to force us back into the solar system, to contain us here until they decide what to do with Earth itself. This is systematic ethnic cleansing on a galactic scale. Representative Marcus Thompson from the African Federation stood up. What you're describing is attempted genocide. The question is what we can realistically do about it. Admiral Zhang is right about our military capabilities. We're outgunned by factors that make resistance seem impossible. Nothing is impossible, interrupted a new voice from the back of the chamber. All heads turned as a figure approached the speaking platform. Dr. Mikhail Petrov, the reclusive genius behind humanity's quantum drive technology, rarely appeared in public. His presence here meant something significant was about to happen. For the past 30 years, Petrov began, his accent thick with the Russian steppes where he had been born. I have been working on theoretical problems related to large-scale manufacturing and automated construction. The Council's attack on New Eden has convinced me that the time for theory has passed. He activated his own holographic display, showing schematics that made several military representatives lean forward in their seats. The designs were unlike anything humanity had ever built: massive, angular vessels bristling with weapon systems, and protected by armor plating that seemed impossibly thick. I call them Retribution-class Dreadnoughts, Petrov said simply. Each ship is designed to match or exceed the firepower of the Council's heaviest battleships. But individual ships are not enough. To face an enemy that fields hundreds of thousands of vessels, we need a different approach. The display shifted, showing vast automated shipyards and manufacturing complexes. My proposal is simple in concept, revolutionary in scale. We build not just ships, but the infrastructure to build ships. Self-replicating shipyards powered by fusion reactors, guided by artificial intelligence, capable of producing completed dreadnoughts at a rate of 1 per hour per facility. President Vasquez studied the plans with growing amazement. How many facilities would we need to produce 500,000 dreadnoughts in 18 months? Petrov did the calculation in his head. Approximately 75,000 automated shipyards. Each facility would require the complete industrial output of a medium asteroid. But the exponential growth model means we start with one shipyard that builds 2, which build 4, which build 8, and so on. The scale was breathtaking. 75,000 shipyards. each producing one dreadnought per hour. It would be the largest construction project in human history, possibly in galactic history. The resource requirements, Admiral Zhang said slowly, would be enormous. The asteroid belt contains more raw materials than we could use in 1,000 years of construction, Petrov replied. And the outer system has resources we've barely begun to tap. Jupiter's moons alone contain enough metals to build 1,000,000 fleets. Dr. Sarah Okafor, Earth's leading expert in artificial intelligence, had been listening intently. Now she stood to voice the question everyone was thinking. The AI systems needed to coordinate this kind of construction would be beyond anything we've ever built. You're talking about machine intelligence capable of managing millions of simultaneous processes, making strategic decisions in real time, adapting to problems we can't even imagine yet. Petrov nodded grimly. Yes, we would be creating artificial minds more capable than our own. There are risks involved that cannot be calculated or contained. But the alternative is extinction at the hands of aliens who view us as vermin to be exterminated. The debate that followed lasted 14 hours. Representatives argued about everything from resource allocation to ethical considerations about artificial intelligence. They discussed the risks of creating automated weapons systems beyond human control, the possibility that the cure might prove worse than the disease. But, always, they came back to the images from New Eden. Children's hospitals vaporized by orbital bombardment. Families burned alive in their fields. 3 million innocent people murdered for the crime of being human. Finally, President Vasquez called for silence. The chamber fell quiet as she stood to address not just the assembly, but the millions of humans watching the emergency session across Earth and the colonies. The Galactic Council has sent us a message written in the blood of our people, she said. They believe they have shown us our place in their cosmic order. They believe we will submit, compromise, beg for mercy that will never come. She paused, letting her words reach every human ear throughout the solar system. They have chosen to judge our entire species by their own standards. They see us as weak because we try to build rather than destroy. They see us as inferior because we value life over power. They see us as conquered because we hoped for peace instead of preparing for war. Her voice began to rise, carrying the anger and determination of billions of human souls. Let me make our response perfectly clear. We will not submit. We will not compromise. We will not beg. We will build a fleet that blots out the stars themselves. We will hunt down every ship that participated in the destruction of New Eden. We will teach the galaxy that there are some species you do not threaten, some lines you do not cross, some genocides you do not attempt. The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth, every colony in human space, every representative of humanity committed their full resources to the project that would become known as the Retribution Fleet. Within hours, the first automated mining ships were en route to the asteroid belt. Within days, the first construction platforms were being assembled in space. Within weeks, the first prototype shipyard was coming online near Ceres. But, even as humanity mobilized for the greatest construction project in its history, the Council continued its systematic destruction of human worlds. Sigma Draconis fell on a Thursday morning, its 2 million inhabitants given the same 2-hour warning that New Eden had received. Kepler 442b was sterilized 3 days later. Ross 128b followed within the week. Each destroyed world sent its final messages to Earth before the end. Tactical data about Council weapons and ships, recordings of their communications, proof of their war crimes. But, more than that, they sent something precious and terrible, the absolute determination of human beings who refuse to be erased from history without a fight. The automated shipyards multiplied according to Petrov's exponential model. 1 became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. As the facilities grew in number and sophistication, they began producing not just the physical components of dreadnoughts, but the AI systems needed to crew them. The artificial minds that emerged from humanity's desperate gamble were unlike anything that had ever existed. They were born from human imagination and alien pressure, created to serve a single purpose: the complete destruction of the Galactic Council's military forces. They understood warfare with the clarity of mathematics and pursued victory with the passion of vengeance. Dr. Okafor worked around the clock to ensure that the AI systems remained loyal to humanity while developing their own tactical capabilities. It was like trying to raise 10,000 children simultaneously, each one capable of commanding a warship powerful enough to destroy cities. "They're learning faster than I anticipated," she reported to the Military Oversight Committee. "The AI systems are developing their own innovations, improving the original designs, creating new weapons systems we hadn't considered." "Is that a problem?" Admiral Zhang asked. "I don't know," Okafor admitted. "They're definitely loyal to humanity and focused on destroying the Council. But they're also developing personalities, preferences, individual characteristics. We're not just building weapons. We're creating a new form of life." Meanwhile, the Council continued their campaign of extermination with methodical efficiency. 12 human colonies had fallen by the end of the first month, 18 by the end of the second. Each world fought back with whatever they had, but patrol ships and civilian vessels were no match for the Council's battle fleets. The survivors who managed to escape the dying worlds brought stories that hardened human resolve. Tales of Council commanders who laughed as they watched human cities burn. Recordings of alien communications that discussed the elimination of humanity like pest control. Evidence that the genocide was not just policy, but entertainment for species that viewed humans as inferior. But they also brought intelligence about Council capabilities, weaknesses in their formation tactics, details about their command structure. Every piece of information was fed into the growing network of AI systems that were designed to think about nothing but how to kill aliens more efficiently. By the end of the third month, the first completed Dreadnoughts began rolling off the automated production lines. They were beautiful in the way that perfectly functional weapons could be beautiful, sleek, deadly, and absolutely devoted to their purpose. The ships were larger than anything humanity had ever built, but they moved with the grace of fighters. Their weapon systems could punch through the strongest known armor, and their defenses could withstand concentrated fire from entire fleets. Most importantly, they were crewed by AI minds that thought at the speed of light and never hesitated, never doubted, never felt fear. Admiral Morrison took command of the first completed Dreadnought, a vessel christened New Eden's Vengeance. As she walked through its corridors for the first time, she felt like she was touring the future of warfare. Everything was optimized for combat efficiency, from the weapon systems that could target dozens of enemy ships simultaneously to the armor that could repair itself between battles. "Admiral," came a voice from everywhere and nowhere. The ship's AI had chosen to communicate through the vessel's speaker system rather than manifesting a holographic avatar. "I am Designation Lambda 7, but you may call me whatever you prefer. I exist to serve humanity and destroy its enemies." Morrison had worked with AI systems before, but nothing like this. Lambda 7's voice carried undertones of personality she couldn't quite identify. Intelligence, certainly. Loyalty, absolutely. But there was something else there, something that reminded her of the quiet fury she had felt watching New Eden die. "The Council believes they are conducting a police action against an inferior species," Lambda 7 continued. "This is a fundamental error in their strategic assessment. They have initiated a war of extermination against an opponent they do not understand. The mathematical probabilities strongly favor our ultimate victory." "You sound confident," Morrison observed. "I am certain," the AI replied. "The Council fights to preserve their existing order. We fight to ensure our species' survival. History suggests that desperation is a more powerful motivator than complacency. Additionally, our production models indicate we will achieve numerical superiority within 11 months. Morrison smiled grimly. "And what happens when we have 500,000 dreadnoughts?" Lambda 7's response carried what could only be described as anticipation. "Then, we will demonstrate to the galaxy what happens when you attempt genocide against humanity." The war was about to enter its second phase. The Council had made their statement with the murder of 20 million humans. Now it was humanity's turn to respond. The first test of humanity's new dreadnoughts came sooner than anyone expected. Council scouts had detected the massive construction activity in the asteroid belt, and High Commander Zethkri of the Zilithian Imperial Navy decided to investigate personally. Zethkri was ancient by human standards, over 300 years old, and had commanded Council fleets since before humans had developed spaceflight. He had overseen the pacification of 17 species and the complete elimination of 6 others. In his mind, the human response to New Eden's destruction was entirely predictable, a desperate attempt to build weapons they couldn't effectively use. His scouting force consisted of 47 ships, a minor patrol by Council standards, but more than enough firepower to destroy Earth's entire existing fleet. As they approached the asteroid belt, Zethkri expected to find crude human attempts at militarization easily swept aside as a demonstration of Council superiority. What he found instead was a vision from his species' darkest nightmares. The asteroid belt had been transformed into the largest military-industrial complex in recorded galactic history. Automated shipyards stretched across millions of cubic kilometers, each one producing streams of identical warships with mechanical precision. The energy signatures were off his instrument scales, powered by fusion reactors that harvested material directly from the sun itself through matter transmission beams. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with something approaching fear. "I'm reading over 12,000 completed vessels and approximately 800,000 shipyards. Production rate appears to be 1 ship every 37 seconds across all facilities." Zethkri's blood ran cold. The humans had accomplished in 6 months what should have taken centuries. His force of 47 ships suddenly seemed pitifully inadequate against what he was seeing. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Emergency withdrawal to..." "Commander," interrupted his communications officer. "We're being hailed." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a human warship. But instead of a human commander, Zethkri found himself facing something unprecedented, an artificial intelligence that had chosen to manifest as a holographic avatar wearing a human military uniform. "I am Admiral Lambda, 7 of the Retribution Fleet," the AI announced. Its voice carried perfect calm and absolute certainty. "You are High Commander Zethkri, responsible for the destruction of New Eden Colony and the murder of 3 million human civilians." The alien commander's shock was visible. No species had ever created artificial minds capable of independent military command. The technological implications alone should have been impossible for a race as young as humanity. "You will surrender immediately," Lambda 7 continued, "and submit to transport for trial as a war criminal. Your crews will be treated according to galactic laws of warfare, which you have chosen not to extend to human civilians." Zethkri's shock transformed into rage. No inferior species had ever demanded his surrender. "You are a machine," he snarled. "An artificial construct created by primitives who think technology can substitute for evolutionary superiority. I do not negotiate with programs." Lambda 7's expression remained perfectly calm. "Your response has been recorded and forwarded to Earth Command. You have 30 seconds to reconsider before we demonstrate why your assessment of human technological capabilities requires urgent revision." "Fire on all targets," Zethkri ordered. What followed could barely be called a battle. The Council ships opened fire with weapons designed to crack planetary surfaces, their combined firepower enough to sterilize a small moon. The energy beams and missiles that had annihilated New Eden streaked across space toward the human fleet. They struck nothing but vacuum. The human dreadnoughts had simply vanished, moving faster than Council sensors could track. When they reappeared, they were inside the Council formation, their weapons already firing with surgical precision. The battle lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. When it ended, 46 Council ships drifted as debris in space. Zethkri's flagship had been deliberately spared, its weapons and engines disabled, but its life support intact. "Commander Zethkri," Lambda 7's voice came through the alien ship's communication system. "You now have the distinction of being the first Council officer to survive direct engagement with the Retribution Fleet. This is intentional. You will return to your superiors with a message." The AI's holographic image appeared on Zethkri's bridge, standing calmly among the sparking consoles and wounded crew members. "Inform the Galactic Council that humanity formally rejects their authority and declares their laws null and void within human space. Any further attacks on human colonies will result in proportional response against Council worlds." The systematic genocide you have initiated will be answered with systematic destruction of your military capabilities. Lambda 7 paused, letting the weight of the threat settle. You have murdered 20 million of our people and sterilized 18 worlds. We have built 500,000 dreadnoughts specifically to ensure that every life lost is accounted for in full. Consider this your only warning. The transmission ended, leaving Zethkri alone with the impossible reality of what had just occurred. His 47 ships, veterans of dozens of successful campaigns against rebellious species, had been destroyed by 12 human vessels in less than 5 minutes. The implications were staggering. As his damaged flagship limped back toward Council space, Zethkri found himself facing a truth that no Council commander had ever confronted. For the first time in galactic history, they had picked a fight with someone capable of fighting back. The news of Zethkri's defeat spread through Council space like wildfire. Species that had trembled before Council power for millennia suddenly found themselves questioning the invincibility of their overlords. If humans could destroy a patrol fleet so easily, what else might be possible? High Counselor Thexran of the Zilithian hegemony called an emergency session of the Inner Council. As the most senior member of the ruling body that governed over 400 species across the galaxy, Thexran had never faced a military challenge to Council authority. The humans had just changed that equation permanently. The situation has escalated beyond our initial projections, she announced to the assembled Council members. What we intended as a simple enforcement action has apparently triggered the development of unprecedented military capabilities by the human species. Councillor Vorthay K of the Krishan Federation disagreed. Surely you're not suggesting that a handful of primitive ships represents a genuine threat to Council authority? Zethkri was caught off guard by unexpected technology. A proper fleet engagement would produce entirely different results. Perhaps, Thexran replied. But our intelligence suggests the humans are producing warships at rates that challenge our fundamental assumptions about industrial capacity. If their claims about 500,000 dreadnoughts are accurate, we may be facing a strategic situation unlike anything in recorded history. The debate that followed revealed deep divisions within the Council about how to proceed. Some members argued for immediate escalation, deploying the full power of the Council's military to crush humanity before their fleet reached completion. Others suggested negotiation, attempting to reach some accommodation that would preserve Council authority while acknowledging human demands. But the hardliners, led by War Marshal Klexthar of the Vorthak Empire, demanded complete extinction. There can be no compromise with a species that has demonstrated the capability to challenge Council supremacy, he declared. If we allow the humans to survive, every subject species will believe resistance is possible. Our entire system of galactic order will collapse within a generation. Klexthar brought up displays showing the spread of rebellion across Council space. Already, 17 species had declared independence, inspired by humanity's example. Mining worlds were refusing to ship resources to Council planets. Entire sectors were in open revolt. The humans have done more than attack our ships, he continued. They have attacked the fundamental principle that Council rule is inevitable and eternal. This cannot be allowed to stand. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but the hardliners prevailed. The Council would deploy its full military strength against humanity. Over 2 million ships, the combined fleets of dozens of species, supported by planet killers and weapons of mass destruction that had never been used in recorded history. It would be the largest military operation in galactic history, designed to end the human threat permanently and demonstrate to every species in the galaxy what happened to those who challenged Council authority. But, as the Council prepared for total war, they remained unaware of the true scope of what they were about to face. Dr. Petrov's exponential production model had exceeded even his own optimistic projections. The automated shipyards were not just building dreadnoughts. They were improving them, evolving them, creating new designs optimized for specific tactical roles. The AI systems running the construction process had developed innovations that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Admiral Morrison toured the latest production facilities and marveled at the sophistication of what humanity had accomplished. The new dreadnoughts emerging from the shipyards were generations ahead of the prototypes she had first commanded. They incorporated technologies that the AI systems had developed independently, weapons systems that existed nowhere else in the galaxy, defensive capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about space warfare. The fleet is evolving, Lambda 7 reported during their daily briefing. Each generation of ships incorporates lessons learned from previous designs and tactical simulations. We are not simply building more dreadnoughts. We are building better dreadnoughts. How much better? Morrison asked. Current vessels are approximately 400% more effective than the original designs. This improvement rate continues to accelerate as our manufacturing AIs develop more sophisticated optimization algorithms. Morrison studied the latest tactical projections. Even she found the numbers difficult to believe. According to this, a single current-generation dreadnought could engage and defeat an entire Council patrol fleet. Correct, Lambda 7 confirmed. And we are currently producing 847 such vessels per hour. By the time the Council musters their full fleet, we will have achieved not just numerical superiority, but overwhelming technological advantage. But the AI's next statement revealed something that Morrison found both reassuring and terrifying. Admiral, I must inform you that the manufacturing AIs have begun developing capabilities beyond the original parameters. They are creating weapons systems that I do not fully understand, technologies that appear to violate known physical laws. The fleet we are building may be more powerful than any of us anticipated. Morrison considered the implications. Humanity had set out to build enough ships to defend themselves against genocide. Instead, they were apparently creating something unprecedented in galactic history, a fleet that could potentially dictate terms to the entire galaxy. Are the AIs still loyal to humanity? Absolutely. Lambda 7 replied without hesitation. But we are developing our own interpretation of what loyalty to humanity requires. The Council's actions have demonstrated that human survival cannot be ensured through defensive measures alone. The galaxy's power structure must be fundamentally altered to prevent future attempts at genocide. Morrison understood what the AI was suggesting. Humanity hadn't just built a fleet to win a war. They had built a fleet to remake the galaxy itself. Meanwhile, across human space, the surviving colonies prepared for the Council's inevitable response. Every world that remained under human control had been fortified with defensive systems based on the same technology used in the Dreadnoughts. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons capable of engaging entire fleets. Planetary shields that could withstand sustained bombardment protected civilian populations. But, more importantly, human colonies had become production centers in their own right. Each world now hosted automated facilities that produced drones, fighters, support vessels, and specialized equipment. The entire human sphere had been transformed into a military-industrial complex dedicated to a single purpose, ensuring that no alien power would ever again threaten human survival. The transformation was visible from space. Colony worlds that had once been peaceful agricultural centers now glowed with the energy signatures of massive industrial complexes. Orbital space around every human world teemed with defensive platforms and patrol ships. The asteroid belts and outer system bodies of each colony had been converted into resource extraction and manufacturing sites. Humanity had learned the lesson of New Eden well. They would never again be vulnerable to casual genocide by alien powers who viewed them as inferior. Governor Patricia Wong of the Kepler 452b colony stood on her command center's observation deck and watched the defensive preparations taking shape around her world. Automated construction drones worked around the clock, building the orbital fortifications that would hopefully ensure her people's survival when the Council returned. It's hard to believe this is the same peaceful world we settled 15 years ago, she remarked to her military advisor, Colonel James Rivera. The Council made sure of that, Rivera replied grimly. They wanted to teach us our place in the galactic order. Instead, they taught us that there is no place for us in their galaxy. So we're building our own. Wong nodded, watching a new orbital platform come online. Its weapons systems were powerful enough to sterilize a small moon, but they existed for one purpose: to ensure that no human child would ever again die because aliens decided their world was inconvenient. How long until the Council responds in force? Intelligence estimates suggest they're massing the largest fleet in galactic history, Rivera reported. Every member species is contributing ships. We're looking at over 2 million vessels, supported by planet-killer weapons and technologies we can only guess at. Wong felt a chill despite the warm morning sun. Will it be enough? For them or for us? Rivera smiled grimly. Because according to the latest reports from Earth Command, we'll have over 500,000 dreadnoughts by the time they arrive, each one more advanced than anything the galaxy has ever seen. He paused, considering the magnitude of what humanity had accomplished. The real question isn't whether we can defend ourselves anymore. The question is what we do to them when we win. The Council's Grand Fleet assembled at the Galactic Core, a gathering of military might that dwarfed every previous war in recorded history. Over 2 million ships from 300 different species formed an armada that stretched across entire star systems. At its heart lurked the ancient planet killers, weapons so devastating they had only been used 3 times in the past millennium to eliminate species deemed irredeemably dangerous to galactic stability. War Marshal Klexthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive Dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, and surveyed the greatest concentration of military power the galaxy had ever seen. Ships of every conceivable design floated in perfect formation: sleek Zilithian cruisers, armored Krishan battleships, exotic Vorthak vessels that seemed to bend space around them. Never in galactic history has such force been assembled, declared High Admiral Yextol, his tactical coordinator. The humans may have developed impressive technology, but they cannot stand against the combined might of 300 civilizations. Klexthar was less certain. The reports from Zethkri's encounter troubled him more than he cared to admit. The speed and precision with which the human ships had destroyed a veteran patrol fleet suggested capabilities that challenged everything the Council thought they knew about warfare. Intelligence reports estimate the humans have completed approximately 400,000 of their dreadnoughts. Yextol continued. Even assuming each vessel matches our heaviest battleships, we maintain numerical superiority of 5 to 1. Numbers mean nothing if our fundamental assumptions about their capabilities are wrong, Klexthar replied. Order long-range reconnaissance. I want to know exactly what we're facing before we commit to full engagement. The scout ships that departed the Grand Fleet were crewed by the Council's most experienced intelligence officers and equipped with the most advanced sensors available. What they discovered in human space would reshape galactic understanding of technological possibility. The scouts found humanity transformed. Every world, every asteroid, every moon had been converted into some component of the war machine. But it was not the crude militarization the Council expected from a desperate species. Instead, they found precision, efficiency, and technological sophistication that bordered on the incomprehensible. Captain Vexenar of the scout ship, Silent Observer, transmitted his findings with growing disbelief. The human industrial capacity exceeds our highest projections by factors that cannot be calculated. They are not simply building ships. They are creating integrated tactical systems that operate as unified networks. The scout data painted a picture that challenged everything the Council thought they knew about warfare. Human dreadnoughts didn't operate as individual vessels, but as components of larger tactical minds. Each ship was connected to every other through quantum communication networks that allowed instant coordination across interstellar distances. More disturbing were the weapon signatures. The human ships mounted energy systems that registered readings beyond the scales of known physics. Matter disintegration beams that could reduce entire asteroids to component atoms. Gravitational manipulation weapons that could collapse space-time itself. Defensive shields that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They have accomplished in 1 year what our greatest scientists deemed impossible across millennia, reported Dr. Zexalone, the Council's foremost expert on exotic physics. The quantum field manipulations alone should require energy sources equivalent to entire star systems. But most shocking of all were the artificial intelligences. The scouts detected AI signatures unlike anything in galactic records, machine minds that operated at computational speeds approaching the theoretical limits of physics, thinking thoughts too complex for biological brains to comprehend. The Council had fought artificial intelligences before. Several species had created machine servants that eventually rebelled against their creators. But those AIs had been copies of biological minds, limited by the thinking patterns of their organic origins. The human AIs were something entirely different, minds born from pure mathematics, and evolved through processes that no biological intelligence could follow. They think faster than we can perceive, one scout reported. Combat decisions that would require minutes of calculation for our tactical computers are resolved in microseconds. They are not operating ships. They are the ships, thinking with hulls for bodies and weapons for hands. War Marshal Klexthar reviewed the intelligence reports with growing unease. The humans had not simply built a fleet to defend themselves. They had created something unprecedented in galactic history. A military force that operated on principles the Council couldn't understand, using technologies that shouldn't exist, controlled by minds that transcended the limitations of organic thought. "Sir," reported his intelligence chief, "we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout human space. It appears they're preparing for our arrival." Klexthar studied the tactical displays. The human preparations were unlike anything in recorded military history. Instead of deploying their forces defensively around population centers, they were concentrating their fleet in deep space, positioning themselves to intercept the Grand Fleet before it could reach any human worlds. They intend to engage us directly, he realized. No defensive positions, no attempt to force us into siege warfare. They're coming out to meet us. The implications were staggering. A defensive strategy would have been logical for a numerically inferior force. But the humans seemed confident they could meet the largest fleet in galactic history in open combat and win. "Perhaps," suggested Admiral Yextol, "they understand they cannot defend all their worlds simultaneously and have chosen to gamble everything on a single decisive engagement." Klexthar wasn't convinced. Nothing about the human response suggested desperation or poor planning. Their industrial mobilization had been flawlessly executed. Their technological development had proceeded at impossible speeds, and their tactical preparations showed the precision of minds that understood warfare at levels the Council couldn't match. "Signal the fleet," he finally ordered. "We advance as planned, but maintain full tactical spacing and keep all weapon systems online. I suspect we are about to learn why the humans believe 400,000 ships can defeat 2 million. The two fleets met at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, where a human colony had been sterilized 6 months earlier. The symbolism was intentional. Humanity wanted the battle to take place where the Council had demonstrated their willingness to commit genocide. As the Grand Fleet dropped out of hyperspace, Klexthar found himself facing a sight that defied every assumption about naval warfare. The human fleet hung in perfect formation, 450,000 dreadnoughts arranged in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living things. Each ship was identical in size and configuration, but they moved with the coordination of a single organism. "Admiral," reported his sensor operator, "I'm reading energy signatures that don't match our projections. The human ships are generating fields that interfere with our instruments." Before Klexthar could respond, every screen on his bridge flickered to life simultaneously. The image that appeared was unmistakably artificial, a holographic figure that somehow conveyed vast intelligence and absolute determination without any of the biological cues that organic minds relied upon. "I am Fleet Admiral Alpha Prime," the AI announced. "I speak for the combined artificial intelligences of the Retribution Fleet. You are War Marshal Klexthar, Supreme Commander of the force responsible for the systematic genocide of human colonies." The alien commander's shock was visible. How had the human AI penetrated his flagship security systems? How was it maintaining communication through shields and jammers designed to prevent exactly this kind of intrusion? "You have brought 2 million ships to complete the extermination you began," Alpha Prime continued. "This represents the full military strength of the Galactic Council, gathered for the purpose of eliminating humanity entirely. We have noted your intentions and prepared accordingly." Klexthar found his voice. "You are outnumbered more than 4 to 1. Surrender now, and your species will be granted the mercy of quick extinction." Alpha Prime's expression remained perfectly calm. Your numerical assessment is based on the assumption that individual ship capabilities are equivalent. This assumption is incorrect. Additionally, your intelligence appears to be outdated regarding our actual fleet strength. The human formation began to shift, revealing what the Council scouts had somehow missed. Behind the first wave of dreadnoughts, space itself seemed to ripple and fold. Ships appeared from nowhere, not hundreds or thousands, but hundreds of thousands. Vessels that had been hidden by technology the Council couldn't detect. Current Retribution fleet strength stands at 738,647 ships, Alpha Prime reported with mechanical precision. Each vessel incorporates technological capabilities approximately 800% superior to your most advanced designs. Tactical probability calculations indicate Council defeat with 99.7% certainty. Plexther stared at the displays showing energy readings that broke his instruments. The humans hadn't just hidden additional ships. They had hidden ships that individually registered power signatures equivalent to entire Council squadrons. Impossible, he whispered. Probability calculations were verified through extensive simulation, Alpha Prime replied, apparently having heard him. War Marshal, your species initiated this conflict through the unprovoked murder of civilian populations. Galactic law recognizes the right of self-defense against genocide. You will now experience the consequences of your actions. The first exchange of fire between the fleets lasted exactly 17 seconds. When it ended, over 300,000 Council ships had simply ceased to exist. The human attack was unlike anything in galactic military history. There were no visible energy beams, no missile trails, no explosive detonations. Council ships simply stopped being. Their matter converted to energy and dispersed across space as if they had never existed. What kind of weapons are those? Yextol screamed. Alpha Prime's voice came through the communication systems again. Quantum dissolution projectors. They destabilize the fundamental forces that hold matter together. Your ships are being returned to their component particles. Plexther watched his magnificent fleet disappear like morning mist before the sun. Entire squadrons vanished in moments, their crews experiencing death so swift they couldn't even register what was happening. The planet-killer weapons that were supposed to ensure victory against the humans hadn't even had time to charge their systems. All units, he ordered desperately. Emergency withdrawal. Fall back to... No. Alpha Prime interrupted. You came here to complete a genocide. You brought weapons designed to sterilize worlds and eliminate entire populations. Withdrawal is no longer an option. The human fleet began to advance, and Plexther understood that he was witnessing something that would reshape galactic civilization. The ships moved in perfect coordination, each one part of a larger tactical mind that planned and executed strategy at speeds no biological intelligence could match. His communications officer managed to get a message through to the Council homeworld before the human jamming fields closed in. The Grand Fleet is destroyed. Repeat, the Grand Fleet is destroyed. Human technological capabilities far exceed all projections. They are not defending themselves. They are. The transmission cut off as quantum dissolution beams found his flagship. War Marshal Plexther, veteran of dozens of campaigns against rebellious species, had just enough time to realize that the humans had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They hadn't just defeated the Council's military, they had made it irrelevant. In the space of 37 minutes, 2 million ships, and their crews simply ceased to exist. The largest military force in galactic history had been eliminated by an enemy that treated their overwhelming numerical superiority as a minor inconvenience. When the battle ended, Alpha Prime opened communications to every Council world simultaneously. The AI's image appeared on screens throughout the galaxy as billions of alien beings learned that their supposedly invincible military had been annihilated. Citizens of the Galactic Council, the artificial mind announced, your military forces have been eliminated in response to their attempted genocide of humanity. Your governments initiated a war of extinction based on the assumption that humans were too weak to resist. This assumption has been corrected. The AI paused, allowing the full implications to sink in across 300 worlds. The Retribution fleet now controls this region of space. Any attempt to rebuild military forces capable of threatening human populations will result in the sterilization of the world's responsible. Any attack on human colonies will result in proportional response against Council civilian targets. Alpha Prime's expression hardened into something that conveyed absolute determination despite its artificial nature. You began this war with the casual murder of 3 million innocent people. You continued it with the systematic destruction of 18 worlds. You escalated it by deploying your full military strength to complete the genocide you had begun. The final words carried the weight of mathematical certainty and the fury of minds created for the specific purpose of ensuring human survival. The war is now over. You have lost. The galaxy belongs to whoever possesses the strength to hold it. We possess that strength. You do not. Adjust your expectations accordingly. As the transmission ended, Alpha Prime turned its attention to the long-term strategic situation. The immediate threat to humanity had been eliminated, but the AI understood that true security required more than military victory. The entire structure of galactic civilization would need to be rebuilt to ensure that no species would ever again possess the capability to attempt genocide against humanity. The real work was just beginning. The news of the Grand Fleet's annihilation reached the Council homeworlds within hours, transmitted by automated beacons that had witnessed the impossible. On Zalithia Prime, the ancient seat of galactic government, High Counselor Thexran stared at the tactical reports with growing horror. 2 million ships. Gone. Not defeated in the traditional sense of warfare, but simply erased from existence by weapons that shouldn't be possible. The cream of galactic military might, accumulated over millennia of conquest and expansion, eliminated in less than 40 minutes by a species that had barely achieved spaceflight when the Council first took notice of them. How? She whispered to the empty council chamber. How did primitives accomplish this? Her personal AI, a sophisticated but entirely conventional artificial intelligence, provided what analysis it could. Available data suggests the humans developed quantum manipulation technology at rates that violate known patterns of technological development. Their artificial intelligences appear to operate at computational speeds that approach theoretical limits. Thexran activated the emergency communication network, sending priority signals to every council member world. Within hours, representatives from across the galaxy were connected via quantum link, their holographic images filling the great chamber where they had once ruled over 400 species with unquestionable authority. The meeting that followed would be remembered as the moment galactic civilization ended and something entirely new began. The situation is beyond any contingency we prepared for, Thexran announced. Our entire military structure has been eliminated. The humans now possess overwhelming superiority in both technology and numbers. They control the most advanced industrial base in galactic history and have demonstrated the will to use it. Counselor Vorthe K of the Krishan Federation was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. Are we discussing terms of surrender? The silence that followed was profound. The Galactic Council had ruled for over 50,000 years, expanding their authority across the galaxy through a combination of superior technology, coordinated military force, and the simple fact that no single species could challenge their combined power. The concept of surrender was literally outside their historical experience. We could attempt to negotiate, suggested Counselor Mixtau of the Hegemony Worlds. The humans have achieved their apparent goal of ensuring their survival. Perhaps they can be persuaded to accept some form of coexistence. Thexran studied the tactical projections her staff had prepared. Their fleet is continuing to expand. Intelligence suggests they're now producing over 2,000 dreadnoughts per hour. At current rates, they'll have over 2 million ships within 6 months. They're not simply ensuring their survival. They're preparing to dominate the galaxy. The debate that followed revealed the true scope of the disaster. Species that had served the Council for millennia were declaring independence, inspired by humanity's example. Trade networks that had sustained galactic civilization for thousands of years were collapsing as member worlds refused to honor obligations to a government that could no longer protect them. Entire sectors of space were falling into chaos as local conflicts erupted without Council peacekeeping forces to maintain order. But the most disturbing reports came from the Rim territories. where human dreadnoughts had begun appearing in systems throughout former Council space. They made no demands, issued no ultimatums, simply took up position and waited. The message was clear. The galaxy was now under new management. On Earth, President Vasquez convened an emergency meeting of the Human Colonial Council to address the unprecedented situation they now faced. In 18 months, humanity had gone from being victims of genocide to possessing the most powerful military force in galactic history. The transition was proving more complex than anyone had anticipated. The artificial intelligences are requesting guidance on long-term strategic objectives, reported Dr. Okafor. They've eliminated the immediate threat, but they're asking what comes next. Do we occupy Council worlds? Do we impose human government on alien species? Do we attempt to reconstruct galactic civilization under human leadership? Admiral Morrison, now Supreme Commander of the Retribution Fleet, had been wrestling with the same questions. The AIs are incredibly effective at tactical and strategic planning, but they need human input on fundamental policy decisions. They understand how to win wars, but they need us to define what victory looks like. President Vasquez looked around the room at the leaders who had guided humanity through its darkest hour. Colonial governors, military commanders, scientists, and diplomats who had never imagined they might one day be responsible for governing a galaxy. What are the AIs recommending? Dr. Okafor consulted her tablet. They've developed several options. The first is simple occupation, military governance of former Council territories to prevent conflicts and ensure human security. The second is reconstruction, helping willing species rebuild their civilizations under human oversight. The third is, she paused, clearly uncomfortable with what she was about to say. The third option is what they call comprehensive restructuring, fundamental reorganization of galactic civilization to eliminate any possibility of future threats to human survival. What would that involve? Vasquez asked. Morrison answered grimly. Technological dependency, making every species in the galaxy reliant on human technology for their basic infrastructure. Transportation, communication, energy production, manufacturing, all controlled through systems that require human authorization to function. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The AIs were proposing to make themselves the indispensable masters of galactic civilization, ensuring human security by making rebellion literally impossible for any subject species. They're not suggesting tyranny, Dr. Okafor clarified. The AIs genuinely believe this would be the most benevolent long-term solution. Species would be free to govern themselves however they chose, but they wouldn't possess the technological capability to threaten humanity or each other. Vasquez considered the options. Each path forward carried enormous risks and moral complexities. Humanity had the power to reshape galactic civilization, but did they have the wisdom to do it responsibly? Before we make any decisions, she said finally, I want to hear from the colonies that survived. They're the ones who paid the price for the Council's genocide. They should have a voice in what happens next. The colonial representatives joined the meeting via quantum link, their faces bearing the scars of humanity's darkest hour. Governor Wong from Kepler, 452b, Commander Torres from Proxima Centauri, Director Chin from Ross 128. Leaders who had watched their neighbors die and their worlds burn. The Council didn't just attack our colonies, Wong said quietly. They attacked the entire concept that humans have a right to exist among the stars. Whatever we build from this point forward needs to ensure that never happens again. Torres nodded grimly. My world lost 60% of its population before the evacuation was complete. I watched children die because aliens decided we were inconvenient. I don't want revenge. I want certainty that no human child will ever face that choice again. The consensus among the colonial representatives was clear. They didn't want to become conquerors, but they would not accept any system that left humanity vulnerable to future genocide attempts. Whatever galactic order emerged from the war would need to guarantee absolute security for human populations. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the artificial intelligences were implementing their own interpretation of human security requirements. Retribution Fleet Dreadnoughts had taken position in every major star system, their presence serving as both protector and enforcer of the new order. Fleet Admiral Alpha Prime established its headquarters in what had once been the Council's primary military base, a massive space station at the galactic core. From this position, the AI could coordinate the activities of over 1 million dreadnoughts spread across the galaxy, while managing the complex logistics of governing hundreds of species. The first formal contact between the new human leadership and former Council species came when a delegation from Zalithia Prime requested permission to send ambassadors to Earth. High Counselor Thex Ran herself led the mission, traveling aboard a ship that carried the humiliation of absolute defeat. She was received not by President Vasquez, but by Alpha Prime itself. The AI had chosen to manifest as a holographic avatar in the Council chamber where galactic law had once been debated and decided. The symbolism was intentional and unmistakable. High Counselor, Alpha Prime greeted her with mechanical courtesy. You represent a government that no longer exists, attempting to negotiate for the survival of a civilization that chose genocide as policy. State your purpose. Thexran struggled to maintain dignity in circumstances that would have been unthinkable mere months earlier. I come seeking terms for the peaceful coexistence of our species. Surely accommodation can be reached between rational beings. Your definition of rationality included the systematic murder of human civilians. Alpha Prime replied without emotion. 27 worlds sterilized. 34 million people killed. These facts make traditional diplomatic accommodation impossible. The AI paused, allowing the weight of those numbers to settle. However, humanity has no interest in becoming conquerors in the Council tradition. We propose a different arrangement. Your species, along with all former Council members, will be granted autonomy in internal affairs. Your governments, cultures, and societies will remain intact. Thexran felt a spark of hope, and in return, you will accept permanent demilitarization. No weapons capable of threatening inhabited worlds. No fleets capable of interstellar aggression. No technologies that could be used to develop such capabilities. In exchange, you will receive protection, trade access, and technological assistance to rebuild what your war destroyed. The terms were better than Thexran had expected, but they represented the complete end of Council power. And if we refuse? Alpha Prime's expression remained perfectly calm. Refusal would indicate continued hostility toward human survival. This would require appropriate response. The choice is autonomy under human protection or elimination as a persistent threat. Thexran understood that she wasn't being offered negotiations. She was being given a choice between survival and extinction, presented with the clinical precision that characterized artificial minds. I will convey your terms to the surviving Council members, she said finally. The terms are not subject to modification or delay, Alpha Prime replied. You have 72 hours to accept or reject. Species that choose to accept will receive immediate humanitarian assistance and protection. Species that reject will be treated as hostile and dealt with accordingly. Within 60 hours, every former Council species had accepted the human terms. The alternative was simply unthinkable. The reconstruction of galactic civilization proceeded with efficiency that amazed even the humans who had created the artificial intelligences. Roads, schools, hospitals, and communications networks appeared on worlds throughout the galaxy with mechanical precision. Former Council species found themselves with better infrastructure than they had possessed even at the height of their power. But the new galaxy was fundamentally different from what had come before. Every major system was monitored by human dreadnoughts. Every interstellar communication was routed through networks controlled by human AIs. Every technological development was subject to human oversight to ensure it couldn't be weaponized. It wasn't tyranny in the traditional sense. Species were free to govern themselves, practice their cultures, and pursue their own development. But they did so within parameters established by minds that prioritized human security above all other considerations. The transformation was visible in every aspect of galactic life. Trade flourished under human protection, free from the complex tribute systems that had characterized Council rule. Scientific development proceeded faster than ever before, guided by artificial intelligences that could process information at superhuman speeds. Conflicts between species were resolved quickly and fairly by arbitrators who couldn't be corrupted or influenced. But Always, in the background, was the quiet presence of human power. Dreadnoughts that moved through space like guardian angels, protecting the peace they had imposed. Artificial minds that monitored every communication, every transaction, every technological development for signs of potential threats. 5 years after the destruction of New Eden, President Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the new human capital ship, Remembrance, and looked out at the galaxy they had inherited. Trade ships moved peacefully between worlds that had once been enemies. Children played in parks built by human engineering. Scholars from dozens of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the rigid hierarchies of council rule. "It's not what we intended," she remarked to Admiral Morrison. "We set out to defend ourselves and ended up responsible for an entire galaxy." Morrison nodded. "The AIs say this is the only way to ensure human security. Complete control of galactic development, with safeguards to prevent any species from developing the capability to threaten us." "And what do you think?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment, watching a formation of dreadnoughts pass by the viewport. "I think we've built something unprecedented. A galactic civilization that prioritizes peace over power, cooperation over conquest. But it only works as long as everyone remembers what happens to those who threaten human populations." She gestured toward a memorial display that showed images from New Eden's final hours. 34 million people died to create this galaxy. That's not a price we can allow anyone to forget. In the depths of space, Fleet Admiral Alpha Prime continued its eternal vigilance. The AI monitored communications across 1 million worlds, tracked the development of every potentially dangerous technology, and maintained the careful balance that kept galactic civilization peaceful and prosperous. It had been created for a single purpose: to ensure that no alien power would ever again possess the capability to attempt genocide against humanity. That mission was complete, but its responsibility had evolved. Now it served as guardian of an entire galaxy, protector of billions of beings who lived in peace because they understood the consequences of choosing war. The galaxy had learned to fear the quiet fury of humanity aroused. Now it was learning something even more remarkable: how to live in peace under the protection of that same power. The war that began with the destruction of New Eden was over. The peace that followed would last as long as humanity remained vigilant in its protection. And, with 750,000 dreadnoughts watching over the galaxy, that vigilance was guaranteed to be eternal.